Okay, this is logical reasoning question 1, prep test 45. As always, first thing that I do is I'm going to glance real quick and just ask myself, what is it that I'm being asked? I'm being asked, what is the argument? So the first thing that I'm looking for is a conclusion when I read the stimulus. And as oftentimes occurs in all LSAT questions when there's an argument, the conclusion is actually most of the time in the first sentence. And it happens here in the first sentence, okay? And so basically what we're getting at is we're really asking, what is the true nature of economic well-being? And we're saying the notion is that our obsession with consumption prevents us from seeing that, okay? And then the second sentence is basically a slew of examples where we say we don't get any satisfaction out of consumption because we basically have to replace things. So the bottom line is it's got to be something more than consumption that defines economic well-being. Okay, we don't know what it is from the stimulus here. We're not told anything, but we just know that it's got to be more than consumption because on the examples that we show, we're not particularly satisfied when consumption is coming up. So again, the first sentence to this is the conclusion, and the second is setting up the premises. So conclusion, premises, oftentimes it happens that way. Once I've got that down, I just go through the answers. And the first question, the first answer choice, economic well-being cannot be defined solely in terms of consumption. That's absolutely the correct answer to the question. The other thing that you should really pick up on a question like this or an answer like this is it's very weak. It says it cannot be defined solely by or solely in terms of, which means that it could literally be, with this answer choice, it could mean that consumption might define 99.999% of what economic well-being is, but there's just a little shred that we need more to define it. So it's a very weak answer, and you'll find that weaker answers give possibilities to make to be the correct answer choice. When you say cannot be defined solely by, it's just a very little sliver. If you were to flip it around and you said economic well-being is mainly defined by terms of consumption, that's much different answer. Okay, so let's look at B though. Satisfaction is possible without consumption. Well, the first thing is it doesn't really address what the conclusion is talking about. It's talking about what is the nature of economic well-being, okay? What is it? And the second thing is satisfaction is possible without consumption, okay? We don't know. We're not given a situation where there is no consumption. We're always talking about consuming in this second sentence, and we're saying we get very little satisfaction from consuming. So we get some satisfaction, but we're not talking about no consumption. So B is really not even part of what's going on in the argument. C, valid measures of consumption cannot be devised. Well, we've never really talked about measuring consumption or anything of that nature. It's really wholly irrelevant to this. I think if you're choosing C, then you're kind of missing the point. This one is pretty obvious that is not the answer. Again, we're not really talking about quantitative. We're not talking about measurements. We're not talking about anything like that. Okay, D, modern products are designed for early obsolescence. Okay, this is kind of one of these things where you kind of think to yourself when you buy a car and it can only go 100,000 miles, you wonder why that is. Well, it's something that might be true, outside of this little LSAT question, and it's often an answer choice that's thrown at you, but at the end of the day, it's got nothing to do with this argument. Okay, so we have to kind of stick within the four corners of the stimulus to identify what the correct answer choice. And while this could be true outside of this question, it really has nothing to do with what the argument's doing. Okay, and then E, satisfaction can provide an adequate quantitative measure of economic well-being. Well, we really don't know that. First off, we don't know about a quantitative measure, and really we've never discussed the notion of how satisfaction and economic well-being coalesce with one another. Now, it is true that we do discuss the fact that We have situations of consumption, and there is very little satisfaction, but we don't know about the quantitative measuring between the two. Okay, so again, just kind of a takeaway from this. Automatically, we know it's an argument. We're looking for the conclusion. We're always kind of looking in the first sentence to see if the conclusion's there. And then when we go through answer choices, we're looking for pretty much a very weak answer choice. Could be, whenever it's a must be, that's a much stronger, it's much harder to make that true. And again, when we say cannot be defined solely in terms of, well, that absolutely has got to be true because, you know, if we go back up and look at the first sentence, we say our obsession with consumption prevents us from seeing true economic well-being. So we know it's got to be at least one other thing, and that's exactly what A does. Okay, thanks.